ENHYPEN HEESEUNG, a person who draws his own standard lines in a silent workshop. Today, we will analyze the pattern of ENHYPEN's HEESEUNG based on BaZi, an Eastern philosophical framework. The overall structure can be summarized in one sentence. A person centered on strong mental energy, who applies responsibility, rules, and standards to himself with strict discipline. 1. Personality. HEESEUNG corresponds to Shin metal, Shinjin. Shin metal represents finely polished jewels, blades, or metal craftsmanship. It is not rough, but precise, not easily consumed or casually used. In other words, the core of his self-esteem lies in value. HEESEUNG embodies the mindset, I don't need to stand out, but I refuse to be used carelessly. And dignity matters more than mere usefulness. As a result, he holds himself to high standards and is sensitive to evaluation. But he does not accept just any form of judgment. He has a strong Zhengguan influence, which makes him highly sensitive to rules, responsibility, roles, and social standards. He tends to think, there is a place I should stand, and this much at least is required of me. Because of this, he cannot live carelessly or brush things off irresponsibly. From a young age, he likely appeared relatively mature beyond his years. HEESEUNG also has a strong Zhengyin influence. Zhengyin relates to thinking, internal standards, learning, and personal logic. He does not act purely on emotion. He needs to understand before he moves. If something does not make sense to him, he will not choose it, no matter how attractive it looks. With weak Bijian/Jikai energy, he is not a forceful or pushy personality. He tends to speak less and is not particularly playful. But when he does speak, his words carry weight. He is not the type to become close quickly, yet once a bond is formed, it lasts a long time. He especially prefers relationships where he does not need to constantly explain himself. 2. Strengths 1. The ability to set his own standards. HEESEUNG values the question, is this right or not, above all else. When alone, his judgment becomes even more precise. He prioritizes principles and completion over trends, giving him a decision-making ability that remains stable in the long run. 2. Emotional stability that does not interfere with judgment. He does not allow a bad mood to ruin his work. Even when emotions are present, he does not grant them decision-making power. In moments of crisis, he does not panic. Instead, he calmly chooses the best possible option at this moment. This stability only strengthens with age. 3. Quiet but reliable trust building. HEESEUNG builds trust through action and results, and he takes his words seriously once spoken. Within teams and relationships, he becomes a core pillar, eventually turning into someone who is deeply missed if absent. Although he has clear goals, he does not feel the need to prove himself outwardly. He lets outcomes speak for him. 4. Exceptional self-discipline. He can endure not doing everything he wants to do. Even when something seems like a short-term loss, he will choose it if it aligns with his standards. He is resistant to temptation, thinks long-term, and builds a career that accumulates rather than spikes briefly. 5. An unshakable sense of self-worth. He has a clear internal line of, this much at least must be upheld. He never diminishes himself below that line. Even when the external environment wavers, his center remains intact. These strengths shine most clearly in environments with clear standards and defined roles, particularly in judgment, trust, and presence. They become more visible in his 30s than his 20s, and even more so in his 40s. In his 20s, he may struggle with environments that do not match his standards, leading him to wonder, am I too demanding? In his 30s, accumulated experience merges with reality. His words become fewer, and his decisions faster. From this point, he becomes someone people say they can trust and leave things to. In his 40s and beyond, his very existence becomes the standard, and he naturally steps into roles of coordination and decision-making. In summary, HEESEUNG's strengths are an unwavering standard, judgment free from emotional sway, results over words, long-term accumulated skill, and a structure in which time ultimately becomes his ally. 3. Relationship patterns. He does not keep many people, but those who pass his standards stay for a long time. He does not maintain relationships out of fear of loneliness, nor does he lower his standards just to preserve them. At first, he takes time to observe how others operate according to their own principles, which can make him seem distant or cold. However, once someone passes his internal standard, he changes. He does not become more talkative, but he becomes consistent. Promises, attitudes, and boundaries stabilize. His care is not performative, nor does he impose emotion on others. It feels more like being steadily present. When standards do not align, he does not fight or persuade. He quietly adjusts distance and allows the relationship to resolve naturally. He remains stable within relationships, neither dependent nor emotionally excessive. Yet he is the one who remains during crises and the one people seek in difficult times. Within a team, he supports stability and standards rather than standing at the front. Though he appears quiet and observant, he is already analyzing structure, roles, and responsibility lines. When given a role, he executes it precisely, pursuing the mindset of, "This is how it should be done." His outputs are consistently reliable, with minimal errors in his area of responsibility. In conflicts, he calmly identifies what the rules were, where responsibility lay, and which line was crossed. 4. Internal conflict. I want to do things properly, so why does the world seem to run so carelessly? His conflicts are not explosive, but quietly cumulative. Internally, he believes accuracy, standards, and responsibility are non-negotiable. Externally, he often encounters shortcuts, surface-level explanations, and avoidance of responsibility. This gap generates a persistent question. Am I too strict? Or am I simply in the wrong place? He tends to endure rather than confront, absorbing issues up to a certain limit while keeping an internal log. Eventually, tension deepens between "someone has to do this" and "this isn't actually my responsibility." Although he may take on extra burden, his emotional distance grows. He wonders whether explaining might help, yet knows that doing so would likely exhaust him further. So he chooses silence and distance over explanation or persuasion. Rather than lowering his standards, he chooses to change environments. He can endure a lot, but not indefinitely. And when he leaves, he does so quietly. 5. Onstage energy. On stage, Heesung avoids emotional excess or excessive ad-libs. He maintains consistent quality through stable breath and tempo. His vocal style is refined, precise, and controlled. Rather than shouting emotion outward, he places emotion within structure. He carefully considers tonal angle, blend, and suitability to the song. No note is wasted, and ornamentation is restrained. In recording sessions, he understands direction quickly, maintains quality through repetition, and earns producers' trust. Heesung anchors ENHYPEN's sound. He considers not only his own part, but the entire musical flow. By organizing the team's overall sound, his presence brings songs closer to completion. 6. Future career outlook. As a solo artist, Heesung is likely to become a trust-based soloist. In group settings, he adjusts his standards to the team average. As a soloist, his standard becomes himself. His attention to detail translates directly into results, producing music that listeners return to over time. Gradually moving beyond the idle framework, he is likely to focus on live performance and music-centered work, operating as a reliable vocal asset. His path toward producer or director roles is not driven by desire, but by the fact that he is already functioning that way. He becomes a director not because he wants to make, but because he is already making. He is a quality control-oriented creator, one who asks first, "Does this pass the standard?" As he increasingly focuses on others' parts, offers guidance in the studio, and is asked, "Could you take a look at this?" he naturally steps into a de facto directing role, even without a formal title. Closing on the standards Heesung has drawn, his music grows deeper, and people remain longer. May quiet trust continue to follow the time and discipline he has built, and may the lines he has drawn continue to protect both himself and his music for a long time to come.